All right, welcome to another Global Educators Global Perspective Talk. Today we have four guests from across the world, people who have been working in education for a number of years. Esteemed educators, you say, people who have worked in so many different countries and taught a wide range of subjects. Today I'm going to bring four fantastic guests on stage, and we're going to be talking about privilege in international education. We're going to be taking that topic, we're going to take it apart, we're going to see what we can learn from each other and also learn from you as viewers. Feel free to participate in the conversation on Facebook and on YouTube. Ask your questions. I put them to the panel and we'll see what we can learn together. Our first guest I'm going to bring on stage is Mr. Donald Cleary. Donald is working in Amman, Jordan. Donald, welcome to Global Perspectives.
Thank you, Dr. Barker.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about what you do, Donald.
I am teaching English at a international school in Amman, and I've taught in a few other countries. I've taught in El Salvador. I'm from Jamaica originally. I've taught internationally in Jamaica as well, and I've also taught in Saudi Arabia.
Yes. So, Donald, you have this group that you call. Tell us a little bit about your group that you form on Facebook.
Well, it's a group called Black International Educators, and it's a group that is aimed at creating an opportunity where people who are generally not so privileged in the international teaching environment will get the opportunity to network with each other and create our own network that may very well give us the opportunity to improve our chances in the international teaching world.
Yeah, you say that, and I suspect you're saying that there are some challenges that exist in that sphere. As we talk about that, you and I talked about this before. I wanted to draw attention to a headline that I came across, and this is going to be interesting because we're going to be talking a little bit about this. And this is an article that exists on one of the websites, medium.com. It says, "Are international schools hiring policies racist? A Brazilian perspective." No, I've read this article and I do think it brings a lovely perspective on what's really going on in international schools. Certainly, we will take this apart as we move on, but I just want to just draw an attention to some of the things that are being written right now in international schools. So I'll bring our other guests on, Donald, and I hope you save your thoughts on this because we'll take a different perspective on this as we move on. So our next guest that we're going to ask to join is Mr. Hailu. He says, call him Hailu. He's a mathematics educator and he's based in Amman as well. Hailu.
Yes.
Welcome. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, Hailu.
The name is Yidnakacho Hailu. Little bit about myself. This is my 31st year as an educator. I'm a teacher, and that's all I am. I love it. That's the only thing I want to be. I've taught in how many countries now? United States, Cyprus, Qatar, Turkey, Ethiopia, Jordan, mostly IB, and I'm loving it.
Welcome. Welcome to the show, Hailu. I'm going to ask another guest to join us on stage as well. And again, this is Mr. Khaled Katawi. Khaled is the DP coordinator and he's based in Saudi Arabia. Khaled, welcome to the show. I think we've lost Khaled's video. Hello, Khaled. I seem to be having some problems, Khaled. I'll come back to Khaled. I'm going to bring on our other guest who is here in the waiting as well. Now, this guest is joining us all the way from Beijing. And so he's quite late in the night, but we're looking forward to hearing his thoughts. And I ask him to join us on stage, Mr. Joel Gedaya. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Joel.
Hi, everyone. My name is Joel. I've taught in several places internationally. I was born in Kenya. I've worked in Saudi Arabia. I've worked in Saudi Arabia with Donald Clary. Then I moved on to Singapore for a small gig, and then to El Salvador, where I spent about 4 good years teaching drama, theater. And then now I'm in Beijing, China, teaching theater, drama, as well as TOK. I do love teaching theater. I think it's a nice tool, or it's a nice forum that allows you to reflect about life. And I enjoy theory of knowledge because of the way it challenges my thinking. It challenges my students' thinking. It allows me to look at the world from a very humble point of view. To know that you don't know much really makes you want to know more. So every day I do want to know more about myself, about others, and I'm glad to be here with all of you, because I think at the end we will all know more.
Thank you, Joel, and I'm certain that your TOK perspective will help us to unpack the big question that we hope to discuss some point later on. Our guest Khalid, I think Khalid is back with us. He was experiencing some technical difficulties, but like a true international educator, hasn't given up, and he's here to join us. Khalid is coming in from Saudi Arabia. Hi, Khalid, how are you?
Hi, good, thank you very much. Hi everyone, my name is Khalid Qattawi. I'm the diploma coordinator at the school in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. I have been in the field of international education for like 12 years now, and it's a really enjoying experience, and a very rich one, because as my colleague said, it really opens up your mind and creates a different person than you as an educator.
Thank you, Khalid. Thank you very much for sharing, and thank you guys all for offering to come along and join this conversation. Now, it's really an interesting time, and as I said, I wanted to share this. I want to start off with this particular headline that I saw somewhere, and I think it sets us up for a lovely conversation. So let me find it, because it says, let's hope you can all see this. It says, we condemn all institutional racism except our own. I'll read the first 2 lines, because at the first line, it says, we feel it be our solemn duty to make a statement about recent events before all our peer institutions beat us to the punch. And it goes on to talk about how they condemn the actions of of racism. But it doesn't condemn their own. It says we condemn all, but it doesn't condemn their own. And if you think deeply, a lot of institutions are coming out now and saying, oh, we have these statements. What are your thoughts on that? Do you see that happening where people are doing that? But yet people are saying, I'm not sure what's happening in our own institution. I want to go first on that.
Well, I mean, with anything else, I think it's easy for you to look outwards before you start looking inwards, right? I mean, to look inwards requires you to be very critical about yourself. It's a lot easier for me to look at something outside of me and see the fault in it. And I think that's a human element. And I don't think that's any different from institutions. It's a lot, I think to some extent, it might be a little bit more difficult for institutions to really be critical of themselves. And in some cases, some institutions might very well think that there is not much to be critical of either. If you look at their makeup and the way they hire and the staff policies, they might very well think that they're doing a good job and there's not much for them to really be critical of.
Joel, you have a thought on that?
Yeah, I wanted to add on to what Donald has said. I wanted to say it's, again, what he said, it's human nature. We are not very good at self-critiquing ourselves as humans, and it's the same thing for an institution. Every time you are critiquing yourself, you usually say, you put a list, maybe 10 things, and you say, oh, I do this very well, this 5 or 6 or 7, because you do 7 very well. The 3 become, it's only this 3 I need to work on, and this 3 to you might be, maybe I do them at 30%. So I think I've excelled. You know, I'm beyond. But then when someone else critiques you, looks at the way you've critiqued yourself, they tend to say, "Oh, hold on. Actually, you only do 4 very, very well, and then the rest you're actually at 30%." So it's the same way with the institution and this idea of racism. Oh, because we have a diverse community in our group, you know, because we have people from 5 different nationalities. We are very, you know, diverse. But is that enough? And of the 5, are you treating them equally as the rest? So I think it's that idea of self-evaluating ourselves. We don't give it a thorough look.
Hi, Lou. I think
Yes,
it's
sir.
enough for schools to just say that we have the right kind of policies. You think that's enough?
I don't think it's enough, but I think the problem could be ignorance. It is
Okay.
it is possible for someone to be racist and not know that he's a racist. I think the victim feels it 100% more than the guilty part, if they're guilty. So they may be doing all the right things. They have an international staff, but they may not be aware because of ignorance of what their policies are, or what the consequences of their policies are. They may not be aware of the consequences of their action. I've been a teacher for over 30 years. In Los Angeles, I faced it, but it was almost impossible to bring it out.
Yeah.
Impossible. I was a young 24-year-old, just graduated from UCLA. I looked so much better, big afro. And, you know, I was passed on to teach calculus. I still remember his name, Dick Witz was the teacher's name. And they just said, okay, he will teach the calculus course. You teach the algebra. And it's very difficult to bring it up and say, you're doing this because I'm black. Because that would be also racism. Maybe that's not why they're doing it, but I felt it. I felt that way. But through 30 years, I've seen bits of it here and there where I would be passed on for a managerial position, for department head. I was passed on for a department head position as a first-year teacher. This teacher came out. By that point, I was maybe 26, 24 years of teaching, and a teacher came. There was a department head position open. I was passed on. Now, maybe I was not qualified. Maybe they saw something in me. But again, it makes you think that it may exist.
And we certainly will come back to that.
They may not know.
Yep, we're going to come back to that. Khalid, what are your thoughts on this, or any one of the comments?
Actually, I agree with what Halu said, because in many cases, it's based on ignorance and lack, let's say, of cultural exposure to other cultures and to other, let's say, nationalities. In my situation, for example, in the context that I'm living in Riyadh, we do not have as much international community as compared to other countries, even neighboring countries like the United Arab Emirates or Jordan. So the understanding of the other is really kind of difficult, and when it comes to racism, it does exist, okay, but at the same time, a lot of it is because of the ignorance. Mr. Halu explained when he spoke about it. In addition, it depends actually on the institution and the policies of the institution that you work for. So in many cases, maybe they do not even have a policy. And I know and I'm aware of some schools where they do not have any policies when it comes to employment or even advertising for jobs. So it is like originated, or it does originate from ignorance sometimes, and other times it just doesn't exist, you know?
Okay, so You know, Hailu, you brought up a point that I want to start unpicking because our topic for today is privilege in international schools. Who gets it and why? And I want to bring that up because a lot of the times when I have conversations with teachers on the international scene and they describe whatever they consider to be a question mark that they have around certain decisions. And we don't want to jump and assume that it is always race because we are aware that even between people of the same color, people do feel slighted when opportunities aren't presented to them. So it's not a case that every time there is a person of color versus another person, we're thinking that it must be a case of racism. Sometimes another person does possess the skill set that is required or express themselves in a much better way on certain ideas that they are seen as a better person to lead over that. And there are a number of reasons for that. One, it could be cultural inclination. In some cultures, you might not be so willing to put yourself forward, while in other cultures, people may do that. So, but I want to stay on the point that you made, Hailu, where you're saying that even if you don't know what the reason was, it did make you think.
Right.
And it's important for us to unpick that in such a way that if anyone's listening, they begin to understand the idea of what having a privilege means in this context. So I want to ask you a little bit more about that now, and then hopefully we can move towards an understanding here. When you say it makes you think, what were you thinking? What were you thinking about when you say it makes you think, even though you don't know? Why did you have to think anything?
I think that part affects all teachers, not just teachers like us. I mean, we are there's a question of safety in schools, in international schools. We don't have safety. We don't know when to speak up or when we can bring this topic up safely without losing your job or your status. In public schools, there is an institution where you can go and say your grievances, but in many schools it's very difficult to speak up. So you feel these things and you hold it in. It's because you have a 2-year contract, and if you say too many things, it's going to be a 2-year contract, period. And this is for any for a lot of, even teachers that are I could say the teachers that are not black.
Yeah.
Okay. Will feel this. They know they're doing this to us, or something is happening, or we're being overlooked, but they cannot speak also because there's a question of safety in international schools. Contracts are not safe.
You're talking job security.
Job security. We cannot. It's not safe enough for us to speak up.
Yeah. Joel, seemed like you wanted to go in.
Yeah. I wanted to add. I mean, I think I can relate so much with what Hailu is saying, and I think I shared this with Donald so many years ago when I moved from Saudi Arabia to Singapore and then secured a job, arrived there, worked for 3 months, and then had to leave abruptly. And it was based on who I was. The school had hired me. The school held me very high, but at that moment, the government felt. From where I came from, the passport I hold as a Kenyan, I did not qualify to be in their country, to be teaching in their country, in Singapore. And for that reason, and this is me hearing this from the head of the school who hired me, said, we all know what is happening here. I mean, we didn't say it, like what Hailu is saying. So in terms of perhaps himself being labeled or others, they did not come forward and say, listen, Joel, you were denied a work permit because of the fact that you're Kenyan. No, they didn't say that. What happened is they said, well, we've asked, we've appealed, we've requested, you have a work visa, but the work permit has not been issued. And because the government is the one that issues those on a quarterly basis, and they decide randomly, by randomly, they may choose people from certain parts of the world.
Yeah.
Because I remember I came with a lot of experience working in an IB curriculum, and then there was someone who came younger than me with no experience, but he was from the UK, and he got the job. He got his papers within 9-10 days, but only because of who he was, the passport he held, not because he had more experience. In fact, I had more experience. I was actually placed higher than him in the school, but I couldn't get it because, hey, he's just Kenyan. So I think sometimes the pressure is when you talk about who gets it and why. I think sometimes it comes from the government itself. These countries where we come from and the countries where we're going to as workplaces. If those two countries don't have a very good diplomatic ties or relationship, there is a tendency for the school to pick one particular group of people than the other. And it doesn't matter the color here. It just, if, for example, China and America are in conflict, there are Chinese who are trying to get to America who will not get the jobs the same way the Americans who are trying to work in China will not get the jobs because the two are in conflict.
Can I add to that, please?
Yes, carry on, Khalid. Thanks.
Yep. Actually, I totally agree with what has been said from both my colleagues. At the same time, we need again to understand that education has evolved in the last, for 25 or 30 years. It became a business and it became a trade. It's not about, especially international schools and schools who are for profit, which are very different from schools who are not or non-for-profit schools. Okay, so in that sense, what Joel has said concerning him getting a job in Singapore, I can really relate to that, and I can say that in Saudi Arabia and in the neighboring countries, we are suffering from the same thing. Okay, whenever there is a white man, okay, and with all due respect to everyone, but whenever there is a white man, he can get the job, although his qualifications may not suit the job, okay? And he would take all the training that is needed to get the job and do the job, although he may not, even after training and after all of the professional development workshops that he has done, may not be able even to do it. But they will, or the school as a business, will allow him to stay as long as possible because it's a trade and it's a business, and it's good to have someone with blue eyes, white skin in front of parents and students. Okay, so when it comes, and I'm very clear, and I do not mean any harm to anyone or disrespect, because there are white people who are very qualified and do the job much better than others. But at the same time, other colors of skin can do that too. Okay, which education institutions, and I think it's all over the world, fail to understand and fail to respect. Okay, I remember maybe 7-8 years ago, I was hired by a school in a country, and I will refrain from naming that country, but it's in the Gulf. Okay, but I couldn't get a visa because of my passport. Okay, and again, I even applied to a Chinese school, and the reply was that they only hired people from the UK, New Zealand, USA, which is a different kind of racism. Because at that time, it doesn't make any difference whether the black or the white man who is coming from a different country can take the job. So racism in the field of education takes many different types. Sometimes it's based on the color, sometimes it's based on the nationality, sometimes based on even age. Okay, so there are a lot of factors here.
No, that's a great point. Donna, do you want to chime in on that?
Yeah. So when we talk about privilege, right? Privilege is multifaceted. So we kind of have to look at the intersectionality, really, of privilege. Because for example, there are some ways where I am not privileged, and there are other ways in which I am privileged. And there are some places that I am not privileged, and there are some places that I would be privileged. Let me explain what I mean. I carry a Jamaican passport and I travel on a Jamaican passport, right? My Jamaican passport is an indicator that I am a native speaker of English, right? But there are some places that my Jamaican passport as a native English speaker will not give me privilege. It will not give me access. For example, it's almost impossible for me to get a job in Europe, especially Western Europe, with my passport. But at the same time, countries like Middle East, maybe Far East, where there are so many schools and not necessarily enough of these Canadian American teachers who can actually fill those slots, then my passport becomes a sort of second-tier passport, right? And then there are other factors. I mean, if you add the fact that you have some people, women, for example, a female would then have her, problems interacting or working in the same space. So when we talk about privilege, I think we need to realize that privilege works in a sort of intersectional way. There are some ways in which some of us are privileged and some ways in which we're not privileged. And then you have some people who are unprivileged in multiple ways. And so those persons find themselves in a space where it's even more difficult to navigate. So when we talk about privilege, I think we need to realize that there are some there's a privilege works in sort of layers, right? There's a passport privilege that we're all talking about here that myself, Khalid, and Joel refer to. Perhaps Yid and Miguel, maybe your passport situation might be different, so you might not have that issue that we face. Like, for example, whenever I'm applying for a job, and if ever I'm offered a job, the first question I ask is, how difficult is it to get a passport for me, a visa for me as a Jamaican? That's the primary question I ask before I accept a job. Once I say they're giving me the job, I'm saying, okay, what's the visa process? How difficult will it be for me to get a visa to come to that country to work? Because as I think Khalid mentioned, or Joel mentioned, diplomatic relationships between countries will impact how easy it is for me to get a visa or how difficult it could be.
I know we're running out of time, but can I add one more thing to this?
No, carry on, man. You go.
Okay, I think part of it is the clientele could be the cause. By the clientele, I mean the clientele in the let's say in the Gulf and in African countries. They run the business basically. If they don't come to the school will not run the school will not be a school. So in Africa, they do want to see the blue-eyed guy and the straight hair. In the Gulf also. So I have one, without mentioning the country or the name of the school. I knew this teacher in America. She was a 4th grade teacher. She went to this country and opened a school after 2 years working in the school. She told me she is opening a school because she knows everyone in her old school will follow her because she is a white woman. She's now a very successful teacher in that country. I mean, she's now a very successful owner of a chain of schools. This is a 10, 12 year in the making, and she owns a chain of schools because she's from the United States. She's white and she's United States. So part of it, the blame is on us, on the Africans and the Gulf, the Gulf state population that wants the non-black person teaching. Okay, if you open a school with most of the people looking like us, you're not going to get any students in that school.
Yeah, but you're opening a deep conversation here about one. Khalid talked about the business, and from the business side, there's a perception of what looks like a good school. And then on the other side, Hailu, you're drawing attention to the idea that the clientele also is saying this is what perhaps a good school looks like.
Right.
A good leader would be that. So, and we talked about privilege. And Donald mentioned the passport privilege, and I think Joel mentioned the passport privilege that exists. But we maybe need to step back a bit and define privilege. Like, so that we understand it, because it's also banded around when we talk about, you kind of mentioned the white privilege as well, you know, and the passport privilege. So there's like a two intersection of privileges that some people have that clearly some people don't. So when we talk about privileges, can we kind of get to a definition of what that really is? What is privilege? If we want to take away the race and take away, what exactly is it when we think about the word privilege? Because we have been using that. Who want to go for that?
I want to start by saying, from my experience, I've seen privilege come in terms of the profile of the school and the profile, therefore, of the faces. I call it faces. The face they want to see on the, you know, yearbook or on the website, and that defines the privilege. So if you are looking at, let's say, senior leadership, you look at you know, these are the top people in the school. What profile do we want? And depending on the profile, then people get certain privileges. So that if you go on an interview, 2 people or 3 people, you know, you look African. I'm gonna say look African because sometimes you're black and you're not African. You're black American. You're black European. So you look African. You look Asian. You look American Canadian. And the school, you know, profile is, we are looking for someone who looks American. Then you don't get it. Then they get it, even though you might be an American black American or African American. They may choose the other one because this is the profile they're looking for. So privilege to me is tied to the profile, the face, and whether the clientele or the government, whoever is looking for.
Any other thoughts?
Privileges is, in my opinion, is advantage, right? It's the advantage that one person has over another, right? That's the way I would look at it. I try to make it as very simple as possible. And that results because of varying factors and some of the factors we already mentioned. But it's, what is the advantage that one person has ahead of the other? Even more so than advantage, what is the advantage that one person gets at the expense of another?
So
Well,
let me
I agree with Donald.
go, Khaled.
You may interfere. Sorry.
No, that's correct.
I agree with Donald. It is advantage, but let's say in the educational field, advantage comes with so many things. So as Joel said before, or Hilo, he may take up a position that he cannot really perform. Okay, you may be rightful to a position because you've been there for a number of years. You have the experience. You have the certificates, workshops, whatever you need to be in that position. But he comes with a different, maybe passport, a different privilege, and he takes that from you. You feel it, you know it, and the administration or whoever is in control knows it as well. But at the same time, there is no, let's say, no justice, no decision to your side. That's for me, that's privilege, and I have experienced this for many years, to be honest, because of my passport, because of my nationality, and because of the context that I've worked in. And in the Gulf, as Hilo said, schools has become, let's say, more open in the last, let's say, 10 years, okay? But at the same time, there is still privilege, even in the most open countries in the Middle East and North Africa, because of, colonization. And I don't want to give a lesson in history, but colonization has really affected the Middle East and North Africa for a long time. And the white man with blue eyes is seen as the master still in many cultures and in many situations. Even when we talk about education, where we, as educators, we enlighten the people, we enlighten students and the community around us. But at the same time, we practice this as educational institutions, let me say, because I don't want to refer to educators, sorry. So as educational institutions, we still practice racism, and we still practice colonialists, ideas about people and who they are, and define people or persons according to the skin color or according to their nationality or passport or whatever.
Another perspective also when you I mean, if I'm to add on to the idea of advantage is your papers, your documents, where you've studied.
Wow.
So, for example, if there's 5 of us, you know, I have a doctorate from a Kenyan university, and someone has a degree from Harvard, or the one from Harvard is seen as more knowledgeable than a Kenyan university. What is this university? What's its name? What have they contributed to the world of education or the world of teaching? And so your advantage goes down, and that's why I think most of us, when we are pursuing our studies, we always go for those top, as they call them, or the Ivy League kind of colleges from around the world. Why? Because we know
That
it will
there's a
give
privilege.
some privilege, some advantage. Now, it doesn't mean that you know, the professors back home in our motherlands and what they're teaching is less compared to what they're teaching. But it's just they have that, again, I'm going to use the word profile. They have that profile of, you know, best compared to. So your papers matters in this way or perspective.
I think to some extent, though, it goes back to what you'd say. I mean, it's about the clientele. I don't know to what extent it's the institutions that are doing this, but if some of these schools are for profit, which a lot of them are, they are privately owned, then they're going to be pandering to the clientele, and if the clientele have this mindset that Khalid just mentioned, you know, this colonial mindset, which we know people still have, then by extension they're going to feed into that. Because in the end, the bottom line is what matters.
So
can I
go ahead.
If we talk about the solution, we've talked about the problem a lot, and the solution is very difficult to find. It's almost impossible. One solution is what my colleague Donald has done, opening up the Facebook page, and we have this kind of forum where we can discuss. The other solution could be that there needs to be a governing body of the schools, even though they are all international schools. They're called international schools, but they are all individual entities. Everyone operates as the way they want to. There's no governing body where they say, okay, you can't do this. You have to have this many African teachers, so you have to have this many white teachers. You have to do this. There's nothing like that. There's no as an individual, I cannot speak up because I would be speaking up to my employer, and he has employer, and he has no one to speak to him. He is the maker or the breaker of my future. Most of us have children, so we learn to shut up and go on with it, because there isn't a body. There is International School Services. There's the Cambridge one. I forgot what the name was. They do the accreditation of schools. This is all business. There isn't a real control over the schools.
So, Hailu, you're talking about the solution, but you're saying that because of the nature of international education, it's going to be difficult to get everyone to agree to move forward with a much more, say, equitable system. Hold on, one point I wanted to throw into this, because sometimes we talk, and I know we mentioned these privileges, but the people who benefit from these privileges would say to you, what privilege are you talking about? I have to work hard to get my job, and I got this job not because of my skin color or because of my passport. How dare you suggest that? How do you work with a friend of yours who might be benefiting from the privilege, but at the same time preserve that, get that understanding of what we're talking about here?
It's very, I think it's I wouldn't say it's very easy, but I could describe the privileges that the person that's getting the privilege has over me. I have to work twice as hard to prove myself. I have to work 3-4 times as hard just to get an interview. I look at my CV and I say, whoa, just look at this guy. He is so good. I mean, I would hire you right away. But no, that's not going to happen because I put my picture next to my CV. It takes a while. In the classroom, again, the clientele, the students are the clientele. Okay, I walk into the classroom and I really have to prove myself. I'm pretty good at maths, but again, I've had questions from my students. Do you really know this? Yes, I do. So this is the privilege where I have to work twice as hard or 3 times as hard to prove myself, even though I shouldn't have to. Okay, just to get in the door, you have to do this. I can say this now because this is now my 31st year. I think I've got 4 or 5 more years, but it has been a very difficult ride.
Well, if talking about the solution and how we can tackle such a thing, I think we really need to take this Facebook group into a different level. And I have talked with Donald about this, because if you want to solve a problem, you do not only mention or talk about the problem itself. You must talk about the solutions and whatever you can do to overcome this problem. So I would suggest that we make this like an institutionalized kind of effort to create a broader group where we can involve everyone, because it's not only people who are suffering from racism in the educational field that are, let's say, not privileged, okay, or who are suffering from the privilege of others. It comes in too many different colors and kinds, by the way. As I said before, it comes because of the business, because of the passport, because of the nationality, because of the skin color, because of the qualification sometimes, okay? But at the same time, we just need to make sure that this effort is not in vain, and we need to start institutionalize it and make it like a really international group where we can all be together and advertise for each other and make it something like, you know, these international institutions like, for example, Search Associates, Shorley, all of the international offices or companies who really try to get people jobs. We can start something like this in order to end discrimination or racism against whoever, not only black people, but also people, I mean, not only people of color, of course, but also people from different nationalities and with different issues. So making this international is going to be really helpful, and let's try our best to really publicize this group and make it international.
I think Khalid is saying, without saying it, the name Black Educators is what Khalid is talking about.
Yeah.
I think you're kind of right. I also feel the same way. Calling it the Black Educators may be the problem, maybe a problem in the future. But now, we could be accused of being racist by calling it Black Educators, because the problem, we have Indian teachers being passed over. We have
all kinds of teachers, to be honest. Arabs.
So we have I'm sure 5 educators we can brainstorm and come up with a name that is more inclusive than Black Educators.
Interesting, very interesting. Donald, you want to comment?
Sorry, Donald.
I'm listening. I'm listening.
I love you, brother.
I've talked to Donald about this before, by the way, and my personal point of view, and to be very honest, I think the name Black Educators is kind of, let's say, not inclusive. I don't want to use any other word, because the group is now including others who are not Black, who are not originally Africans, for example, okay? but at the same time, they are suffering from the same problems. So why not make this international? Okay, and if we are speaking about racism and discrimination, we shouldn't be practicing the same thing against the other.
I used to think of the word black as a metaphor.
Okay.
I never saw it, even though Donald, we had this conversation about, you know, the name of the group, and I in my perspective, I understood the word black as a metaphor to mean anyone who's not privileged, anyone who's marginalized, is usually, because we see the world in black and white, unfortunately. That's the reality. You either are on this side of the fence or the other. And usually the ones who don't get the best are considered black. So you're blacklisted, and all those connotations that come with the word black. They never say yellow or green or blue or white. I mean, sorry, they say white or black. Those are the two that they use. And I've held on to the name Black International Education, and maybe in future it will change, because it's a group of the people, so the people will decide eventually. But for me right now, I would encourage everyone not to see the word black to mean the skin color, but to mean the marginalized. It's just a metaphor. It has a bad connotation. It makes everyone jitter, but that's where we start the conversation. Why does it make everyone shake? Because it's been branded, and it's about time to elevate it to where it should be. It's just another color.
Yeah, but is there any validity in the point raised by Hailu and Khalid?
Yes, there is, because the history dictates that black is implying you are on one side, and if we called it white, it would mean the others, because history has divided those two colors as two opposing colors, but they're not two opposing colors. We as humans have branded them as two opposing colors, and that's why for me black is not a color anymore. It's just a symbol of minority. And if you look at even the marches in the United States right now, it says Black Lives Matters. But it's not only the black people who've come out to fight for this, even though the history has been because of the black or the African Americans, or but it's covered now. Any American of color who has ever felt disadvantaged, they've come out to say, yes, this speaks to us, because again, aside from China, where black actually means good, the rest of the world, black means bad.
I look at it from the from what our goal is. If the goal is for right now the administration who wants to hire teachers, for them to actually look into this and find out, oh, there's Donald, oh, there's Hailu, for them to reach to that point, we're giving them something not to look at. We're giving them something
I think
if we are more inclusive, then they will actually say, oh, look at that, this is interesting. There's an Indian, there's an African, there's a Jamaican, I see a El Salvadorian, and look at all the qualifications. Somehow, if we can come up with a word that would make them look at this before
I don't
get in the way. Right now, with the word black, I'm sorry, but black means black to me. It's
I won't argue what black means.
Well, he's a drama teacher. Metaphor and allegory carries a lot.
He's also a TOK teacher.
We teach English. We teach English as well, Khalid.
Yeah.
So
Hold on, Donald, I see you want to come in. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, when this was started, right, and the name was created, the name was created with two things going on, at least at the time when I was thinking of. One, we had Black Lives Matter going on as something, and secondly, the name itself was meant to speak to this idea of lack of privilege, right? And I don't think there's any other name that would resonate as easily. And if you look at the membership right now, I mean, I don't know, it's a young group. less than a month old, but you have like about 125 people in the group. And if you look at the membership, it's extremely diverse. So it's very interesting that you have such a diverse group of people that are drawn to this name. I think anyone who actually joins the group actually understands that the name Black is not referring to color as much as it's referring to lacking in privilege, disadvantage. Because you have Indian people, you have Latin American people, you have Arabs, a large number of Arabs in the group. You have people who are of different background. So I guess it would be interesting to see what the membership thinks at this point about the name. And I'm sure there will be people who would agree with Khalid and Hailu. But at the same time, creating a name, first of all, to address one thing that Hailu said, I don't think the group as it is right now is meant to be attracting administrators to look at the group. The group is more about us as persons trying to help each other to network. That's the vision as it is right now. Of course, as Khalid said, it might grow into something bigger. But right now we only have 120 members. So it's not as if we have something that is that huge right now to really rethink it. But secondly, I think when we think of the name, I think the name resonates with people who understand that there are a group of people who do not have privilege. Speaking back to the topic, who do not have privilege. And you look into the group, you'll see those people who are in the group from different backgrounds, be it from India, from Latin America, from the Caribbean, from Africa, from North America. So the membership itself kind of suggests that people understand that the name is not literal in meaning, but more, as Joel said, metaphorical to address the idea of this lack of privilege and understanding that this is something that resonates with a diverse set of people who understand that there are some people who do not have these advantages. I mean, if you look at it, I don't know what the name might be. And of course, it could change in the future. I don't know what the name might be. But there is such a cross-section of people that are disadvantaged. I mean, even we haven't even started talking about women yet, right? Because women, again, are disadvantaged in this workspace. We haven't even mentioned women. And then you have all these ethnicities, you have passports, nationalities, you have so many intersections that you need to cross. I mean, I don't know where it would start. I think the name Black International Educators is a starting point that has gotten people to really think and immediately realize that, yeah, there is something that needs to be done.
Yeah, and you know, as teachers, sometimes you come to class, you have to kind of, to hook your students, you say something, or you do something, or you place something on the table, and then it draws people. And then from that, you unpack it, and then you start the real gist of the class. I think that's because of the Black Lives. Sorry.
I think that's exactly what Khalid and Hailu is drawing to, is that no one's fighting against I don't think they're attacking the idea of what the group is called, but they're saying for it to get to where it wants to be, there certainly has to be a conversation about how it's named. And the fact that it needs a conversation to unpack what it could mean. Maybe this suggests that the current word either needs a clear definition, or you choose a word that doesn't need to be constantly defined, so to speak. But that's something that came out of the conversation. I think that's great. So we're talking about privileges, and we're getting towards the end of it. Someone threw in this question. One of our viewers outside, he said, how does this translate into leadership within international schools at senior management and board level? And I suppose what he's coming from is the idea that we can talk about teachers getting jobs, an English teacher, a math teacher, you know, but what about school leadership, heads of school, and perhaps at senior management level? Do schools prioritize what their senior management look like over having the best talent, perhaps, that could? Do you think schools may do that? Clientele, business? What are the thoughts?
Unfortunately, that's what Hailu had mentioned in the beginning. Because of the business look and because of the clientele, I think that's where the problems start, in my opinion, is often they want that profile. I go back to that face at the top to be what Khalid calls the blue eyes. Once it's there, it's catchy. to the parents, to the students, and to anyone who's interested in the school. And most often you will find some of the people up there don't have the right, I would not say the right papers. They do not have the right skills to lead or to manage their team. But because of where they come from, they have found themselves there. And then what will they do? Because they have that perspective, that upbringing, that privilege, they look for people within the same networks. Right now, I'm sure if we did a survey of all the top leadership in all the international schools around the world, there'll be a very small number of them that would be people of color. Majority of them will be from, what they call the big five, either New Zealand, Australia, America, Canada, and UK. They'll be from those 5 schools. And then everyone else falls in 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 10th place. My opinion.
I'm going to give you guys a chance to respond to that, but I'm just sharing what another observer mentioned, just to go back to what you're talking about, the colonialism perhaps still affecting professionals and career. Anyone want to weigh in on how does this translate into leadership?
Yeah, I think it's back to the clientele case. It's even more difficult for any one of us to be the leader of a school. Any one of us. So there is a ceiling for us. We can go as far.
But is that due to our lack of
qualification?
I think I would say, yeah, exactly. I'd say that. That's the way I would see it. I would think that how many of us actually aspire to that?
Hold on. Yes.
I have seen it happen with my own eyes, with my own black or brown eyes. I see a young, good-looking teacher walks into the school. He's probably teaching middle school English. He knows the lingo. He knows the walk. He starts saying things at meetings. He puts his hand up at meetings. I put the same hands up all the time, but he's putting his hands up. He's volunteering for a couple of things. And then there's a middle school assistant principal opening coming up. He goes for it and he gets it. Okay, or she gets it. And then a couple of years later, that person becomes a middle school assistant at the school, as a middle school administrator at the school. It doesn't happen to us. We will get looked over every time because of the privileges the other side gets.
I don't know to what extent I agree with that. I mean, and again, you've been in international teaching for more years than I have been teaching completely, Hailu. But my point is, to what extent do we actually aspire to those roles? To what extent do we get ourselves qualified and actually try and get those roles?
Yeah,
that's a question we need to ask ourselves. I mean,
I want to add to your question, Donald, because I wonder do we operate in a kind of reverse psychology scenario where we don't go for those jobs because we don't feel that those jobs would be given to us? And so, in a sense, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. What are your thoughts on that? That it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. We're not going to get the job, so you know what? I might not go for it, heads of school or whatever, even though I'm qualified or we're qualified. Are we contributing, or is there something really there? Or are we contributing to the world narrative?
I can't add to that because I've never aspired to be outside of my classroom. I love my classroom.
Yeah,
that's the only thing I want to do as a personal choice. But what I have observed, and 30 years of observing is a lot of years. What I've observed where this person with very few qualifications and the growth rate of the professional growth rate of that person, it's just it has to be the privilege. Khalid, what do you think? As a you are an IB coordinator, that's senior management.
It is, and to be honest, as I said before, I experienced this before, okay, and to become the IB coordinator in the school I'm working in right now was an extremely difficult thing. But at the same time, when you prove that you can really improve the work environment, and you can really, let's say, improve students' level and the school achievement level, and you really know what you are doing, and you have the experience to perform the role, then people start believing in you. When I started this position, okay, as the diploma coordinator in my school, there were so many questions around me, specifically even from my teaching colleagues, okay, teachers around me who did not believe that I can do the role. And it was like by not mere chance, but luck played something in it, because the school was suffering from a shortage in employees, and the IB coordinator at that time for 2 years did not do his job properly, and it caused a lot of issues for students. So I was like interviewed for the job, okay, after so many people interviewed and they failed. And when I passed the interview, I was given a task. When I passed the task and proved that I can do the job, again, so many questions arise, and whether I can do the job or not. But time proved, and today, for example, the results were by the IB were issued, and for the first time in like 12 years in my school, we score 85% passing grade. So time proved that I can do the job, okay, although many people before me tried to do it, but they failed because of the privilege that we talked about and explained before. So being privileged doesn't mean that you can do the job. Being white doesn't mean that you can do the job. But at the same time, if someone believes in you and gives you the chance, and you really believe in yourself, okay, then you excel. And just to comment on one of the points raised, whether we cause this privilege in some cases, I can say yes, because in many different situations, I withheld myself from applying to jobs because I thought that, okay, only a white man can do that, or only a white man can get that. Okay, not do it, but get it, because of skin color, because of nationality, passport, whatever. But like, as I said, and like the last 10 years in the area I'm living in, things have started to change, and people became more enlightened, more open-minded, and they know that only, I hate to say the word, but only those who are not really qualified but white can come and work in this environment, okay? So in my school, for example, the school and the foundation the school follows start to believe in the people they hire from other nationalities, not only British, US, or New Zealand, or Australian, whatever, because these people, they tried them, I mean, the school tried them, but they failed miserably in many cases, okay? When we took over, me and a colleague of mine who's Egyptian Mexican, we proved that we can do the job much better than anyone else in the school's history. And they cannot now even believe the amount of students who are passing the IB, because we know what we are doing. Before, the IB coordinator before couldn't even register students because he doesn't know, okay? He was given 1 workshop, 2 workshops, 3 workshops, 5 workshops in 2 years, but at the same time, without really practicing the job and have the practical experience, you cannot really teach. You cannot really do a diploma coordinator's job. Is that right? So you cannot be a drama teacher without being really a drama teacher. You cannot just bring everyone. And it happened. And I think Donald remembers that. You bring anyone with a white skin and you ask him to teach drama. It's very difficult. It's not really the case, okay? You need to be a real teacher, someone with experience, someone with a background, understanding of the other, to be able to perform and to excel. Thank you.
I think in terms of the question, in terms of how does it translate into leadership in international schools, I think, and following up on your question as well, Miguel, I think there is an extent to which we do not put ourselves forward. We do not seek higher qualifications. I think that plays into it as well, and so there is this sort of self-fulfilling prophecy, as you mentioned. Sort of like the concept that Malcolm Gladwell talked about with priming. It's like we've already primed ourselves into believing that we won't get these jobs, so that we don't even try to get these jobs. And I think there is a factor. That factor comes to play in the whole issue. I think it's not just the idea that we are overlooked. I think we already believe we're not going to be overlooked. So there is a degree to which we don't even bother pursue higher qualification. We don't apply for the job. So we just say, you know what? We're not going to get it. So why put myself out there? Why embarrass myself even?
So that comes back to maybe what, because if we are saying that we believe that there is an inherent preference that exists in the system, I mean, and maybe a buildup of privileges that accumulates for certain people, then certainly that may have some bearing in the decisions that we make when we see opportunities, so to speak. So can one of the things that we look at then as a group of people in this position begin to say that we're going to maybe try and break this wall down by asking the question? Because certainly if we don't ask the question, we don't know the answer. We're answering the question ourselves. What do you think about that? Do you think we should be maybe asking more questions of the system by saying, I am applying. I'm not going to let your perceived wall stop me from putting an application in. Or am I just being naive on this?
No, I don't think you're naive. I think we should aspire to the higher positions. Another thing we could do with this forum is, I mean, we have a lot of very rich Black people in the world. They should open the school. They should make it non-profit. They would hire the Black teachers. You know.
Would they?
Really. I mean, we have in Africa, we have some incredibly rich people that would love to hear from us. I don't know. I'm just throwing the idea out that if we somehow cultivate this idea that Black educators are as good as this 5 people that I see on the screen, or even better, and we present this situation, they will be inclined to they will be more open to the idea of having a school in Africa owned by Mr. What's his name? Dan the cement guy.
Dangote. Sorry, I think it's Dangote.
So he one of in Africa or the Gulf. I know from my experience in the Gulf, the kids would love to see a qualified person of Arab origin. Same thing in Africa. If there was a good way if there's a way to get this entrepreneurs interested in us, this could be a way to break the wall. Where we have schools, there are international schools, international because we can bring people from Tanzania, Kenya, Ethiopia, Sudan, Somalia. These are 5 countries that are interconnected. There's your international school, and the owner could be Sheikh Alamudi from Ethiopia. Okay, so this is one way to get the wall broken. We need African and Middle East, Indian entrepreneurs to be interested in educating their people by their own kind. I know this is kind of reverse racism, but this is one way to break the wall.
Yeah. Khalid, do you think that we should be flooding the system with applications, heads of schools, or should we like go, well, that's United World College Singapore. They won't want me. I'm not going to waste my time. What do you think about that?
Well, to be in my school, for example, we've started 3 years ago. We start hiring people according to their qualifications, to be honest, not according to the skin color. And this really made a huge difference in our school. And people did not, at the start, they did not, and I'm speaking about students and parents, they did not, accept the idea. But with time, and they are now used to see people of color, people of different origins from different nationalities and backgrounds, they are used to see them in campus now. No one asks the question now. Okay, why did you bring an Indian to teach physics, for example? This question was asked many times. Why is there a black man teaching English? His accent is weird, and he's coming from Kenya or from whatever. So now these questions are not asked because we show people that we are hiring inclusively according to qualifications, not according to the skin color. When I first arrived to Saudi Arabia, to be honest, only white, British, US, or something like that, or an Arab, okay, with very good fluency in English would teach English, okay? Others were not allowed. But then, like 3 or 4 years after that, it started to change, as I said before, and people became more open-minded because, the internet made everything available, and it really opened up people's minds. Social networks and even hiring agencies, they started publicizing for inclusivity and hiring for people of different backgrounds and nationalities being hired by Search Associates, by TES, by Chorley, by so many different organizations out there that are hiring. So it is changing, and we have started, as I said, like maybe 3 or more even years ago, and it really created a difference. People started to take it in and believe in qualifications instead of skin color and eyes color. So it's very obvious now that we are moving towards a more open community in my school and in other schools too.
So I think we're gonna have to. Joel, you're gonna come in.
Yeah, I was going to say that whatever my colleagues have said is quite true. If you go back to the idea of do you go for those positions? Personally, I go for them. But again, you don't just expose yourself and apply for everything because you want to prove a point. You find the one that meets your skill set, where you have the right qualifications. Definitely, you go for that. The idea of do we start a school of people of color for people of color? I think it's an idea that many people have toyed around with. But I think in the end, it's what Khalid has mentioned is the idea of changing the mindset. And unfortunately, right now, I still go back to my assumption that I made at the beginning is, or at some point, is that if you look at the network of the senior leadership in many international schools, they are predominantly from the privileged class of individuals. Unless some of us rise up there and join this network and kind of infiltrate it, so that when they sit in that round table, because the school heads meet from different parts of the world, they do have these big conferences they hold. If there are people of diverse cultures, diverse background in those forums, then they will be suggesting ideas that cover everyone. But because most of us are in the second or third level of leadership, our voices are not there to be heard. So yes, go for this position, get them, join that elite class, and then kind of try and share those perspectives and say, hey, how come you're thinking this way? Start considering this, and then we will see a more diverse hiring and system
All right.
around.
So thank you, Joel. We're getting towards the end now, and we're gonna be wrapping up in about 5 minutes. All right, because we've been going for a while. But I wonder, as I listen to this, about the history of international schools. And I mean, for me, I didn't even know about international schools and the way they function up to about 10 years ago. You know, I know of, but didn't understand the network and the kind of schooling that happened in national schools. But there were a set of people, particularly the colonials, they knew of it, and people were working in international schools for a number of years because they just knew that international schools was a thing. And I wonder if we're at the point now where, because of the internet, I think Khalid mentioned that people are far more aware of international education as a career. And so this may be the beginning of the diversification of it. Because in the past it was business and politics and ambassadors and so on who needed a school for their kids, and so people knew people. But I wonder if now, because of the fact that information is there, that it might be a good time for us to start saying we deserve a seat at the table, because people are now, more people of color are actually in the international system, and that, you know, I think you mentioned this, Khaled, the idea that when you just started off, you know, people found it strange to find certain people in certain positions, you know, but then people realize that it's not so much the color of your skin or your background or whatever, it's the work that you do, and they begin to appreciate that. And so I just wonder if we're at a point now where the message that we say to people, we put out to people, is to say, hey, get out there again. Don't let what you know of the past affect how you view the future. Like, really go for it, because maybe now people are going to see more people of color in positions and begin to see you as well. And we also need people to do this in order to break that cycle, because I don't think anyone's going to be walking around and picking people off the street and saying, hey, here's a chance for you to do it. So I you know, somewhere in this, we're going to have to reverse that psychology. I think that's my point. We're going to have to reverse that psychology, challenge it. Yeah.
100%. I agree with you. And if we do not take the step forward, no one is going to take it for us. And this Facebook group is, for me, a very good start. And again, I really call for next step, make this kind of international, publicize it everywhere, try to make it like an institutionalized kind of effort to really make it work and get everyone who may even support us, give him a chance to be with us.
Yeah, I think that's a valid point.
I think it's a great. The timing is perfect. Also, I think it is a good time to do this. The history of, I mean, the whole reason why international school was open, I think, it's because we had, you know, this people that we're calling privileged came to this unprivileged areas, and they want to continue that education. So Ethiopia, for example, has I don't know, the most embassies next to the United States, some say. So all of those people need to be educated. So they're all, you know, they're mostly from America. They're mostly white. So they would like someone of their kind to come and educate them. We have people that have gone to Caribbean, the United Nations, it's all over the world. So they want those people to be educated by someone that looks like them. But now we are moving around. Africans are moving around. We are all over the place. We have entrepreneurs that have gone off to different parts of the world. We are the clientele now. In all over Europe, the clientele is of Arab origin or African origin. It's no more the typical international clientele that belongs to the either embassy or United Nations or USAID. We have entrepreneurs that are all over the world that are taking their kids with them. They need this education. So I think it's a good time to introduce us as the educators, as the international educators, as the world educators.
Yeah. And Joel, your final point on this?
I think I'll share the same views I shared with some of my Kenyan colleagues who are in this forum, and I extend this to others. I say think of international not to mean you are away from your home or you are teaching a curriculum that is different from your national curriculum. International to me is a mindset that makes you think about the local towards the global and then the global back to the local. So it doesn't matter if I am teaching the IB, the IGCSE, or the Kenyan system or Jamaican system, or other local systems, as you would call them, national systems, sorry, of education. Education, the purpose of education is to empower the learner and to help them to communicate their knowledge with others and interact. And IB puts it very nicely and colorfully, and so do others. But I encourage us to think about international education, not in terms only of the 4 or the 3 big curriculums that everyone is marketing out there, but to think of it as a mindset that, hey, listen, whether I am in Kenya or in Jamaica or in Saudi Arabia or in Jordan, Oman, I am thinking here and I'm thinking connected to everyone else. I'm thinking everyone else connected to me. And to me, we would have fulfilled our job.
All right. So, I mean, as I said, we're coming to the end. So I want to thank you all for so willingly sharing your perspectives on the big question, who gets a privilege in international schools? Now, certainly there are some differences of views, but that's certainly acceptable given the nature and the experience level of everyone on this panel. So really want to take the time to thank you for giving up your time. Really thank you for your opinions and your wanderings in this conversation. Certainly, anyone who is watching this conversation will see that this is not just a conversation about race per se, but really a real discussion that looks at the underlying issues that may be causing this kind of privilege to be accumulated. And hopefully it helps people understand international education a little bit more. And hopefully it helps us as well understand what we're experiencing and perhaps leave a changed person. So I want to thank you again. I thank Donald for putting together his group, and I'm certain that there's a lot of food for thought coming out of this conversation. And I know we're busy people, so I'm going to just say just that we're going to close the show. And I'm sure there's more to go, but we just have to stop at some point. So thank you again. All right.
Thank
you very much. Thank you, Khaled. Thank you, Donald. Thank you, Joel.
Nice meeting you all.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you. Bye-bye.